Hey everybody, what's going on? My name is Monotooi, coach of the Tampa Bay Luxrays, and today we are going to be going over our Week 8 team builder for the PPL Division 2. If you guys don't know what the PPL is, or the PPL D2, please check out the description below. There will be a link to the PPL YouTube, as well as the Twitter, as well as the links to our opponent this week. We are going up against Rhyquinn, coach of the Nidoqueens Park Rangers. He has a pretty scary team, but before we get into his team, let's just quickly go over the league table, as well as the MVP race after this, or Golden Pokeball Award. So we are sitting at top still, with a win last week over Ruby, still the only undefeated team, in which we look to continue with this match against Rhyquinn. And for the Golden Pokeball Award, we have Mega Lopunny in first place, even though it did not get any kills last week, still 18-0, still way up there on top. And then you got Mega Pinsir second, Mega Charizard X in third. And then you guys can look at all this and read that off if you would like to. So, with that being said, we are now going to move into Rhyquinn's team. He has Sylveon, Hippowdon, Shaman, Slowking, Forretress, Mega Garchomp, Stoutland, Ampharos, Weezing, and Pyroar. So, pretty scary team. He's got some really solid bulk up until Forretress, and then he's got some good bulky offense being like Mega Garchomp, Ampharos. And then he's got some faster threats like Pyroar. Of course, Stoutland in the sand is an issue. And he's got potential T-Spikes. He's got a lot of different forms of hazards. So his team is definitely not bad at all. Especially with the recent transfers that he made. He got rid of Mega Absol, picked up Mega Garchomp. His team has increased in offensive presence, which is a little bit of an issue because Mega Garchomp is actually a pretty big threat to our team. However, in order to combat his team, I have created this team of 6 that will show up right here. Starting off, we have our Nidoqueen. Sludge Wave, Ice Beam, Flamethrower, Toxic Spikes. Toxic Spikes really hurt his team. He has no way to remove hazards aside from the Forretress, which I do have a Spin Blocker for, and Jellicent that I'll get into next. And his Poison type is Levitating, meaning it will not be able to get rid of my Toxic Spikes. And again, it just hits most of his team, can wear most of his team down very nicely. And these 3 moves are pretty much all I need for his team. Like, there's really not much else I need. I could run Flamethrower for Forretress, but Earth Power is a 2 KO anyway. Or no, I am running Flamethrower. Why aren't I running Earth Power? Oh, because it doesn't hit like anything harder that Sludge Wave doesn't, or another coverage move doesn't. So that's why I'm not running Secondary Stab. Also, the Shuka Berry, this is actually a last-minute change that I made very recently. I originally had a Life Orb on there because I'd be able to hit his team extremely hard. Like, I'd be able to massively damage the Weezing, the get a guaranteed kill on Stoutland potentially, hit the Slowking harder and all that, but I had checks to those other things for the most part, and I realized after looking at my team when I was finished with it that the Mega Garchomp is still a pretty big issue to my team. As you can see, it has coverage for the Ferrothorn, can 2 KO Jellicent, can have Stone Edge for the Zapdos, Flareon goes down. So I wanted another way to potentially deal with that, and with the Shuka Berry I can take an Earthquake, even an Adamant Earthquake, and just knock him out with the Ice Beam, which is great, because, again, that thing is just a very big threat. So, that's our Nidoqueen, Toxic Spike setter. We do have another rocker up here that I'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, his team doesn't like hazards, and we do have a Spin Blocker for his only spinner. So, moving on to that Spin Blocker, we have our Jellicent. Running the leftovers, don't really need Colbur Berry. The only thing I'd really want it for is like a Crunch from Stoutland, which I'm not entirely worried about. Like, I'd rather just have the leftovers. Scald, Hex, Taunt, and Recover. Taunt is largely to stop his Forretress from setting up hazards. Once again, not bringing hazard removal this week. Don't want him getting up his rocks. If I can, if he does, not a huge deal, but I just would like to try and stop him. Can also stop his Hippowdon from slacking off or setting up rocks, and stop his Sylveon from setting up wishes. And with the 20 speed investment, I do outspeed his Sylveon uninvested by a couple points. Can also taunt a potential Weezing, so that is why I have that. Can taunt the Slowking, stop it from setting up Calm Minds if it is Calm Mind variant. And not running Will-O-Wisp because we are running Scald, and we do have Toxic Spikes over here, so I didn't think it would be 100% necessary. Hex is very nice because with Toxic Spikes, of course, I do hit things a little bit harder. Well, I hit them double as hard. It turns into a base 130 move, which is very nice. And I can do some massive damage to his team. This thing can also live a hit from the Mega Garchomp, potentially get a burn on it, live a hit from Stoutland, potentially get a burn on it. Shaman's a relatively free switching every time, but I do have some responses to that I'll get into in a little bit. So that is our Jellicent. Big job here is just to spin block and prevent him from getting up hazards. Can also switch into a couple different things, stop his Stoutland from spamming return, which is very nice. And yeah, that's pretty much our Jellicent. Now, moving on, we have a pretty big threatening mon to his team. We have our offensive Expert Belt Zapdos with Thunderbolt, Heat Wave, HP Ice, and Roost, with enough speed to outspeed a Jolly Mega Garchomp by 1 point. These three moves just hit his team extremely hard. I 2 a KO a mainly physically defensive Hippowdon. Even if he's mixed defensive, I 2 a KO Hippowdon with the Expert Belt HP Ice, and I think he's going to be more physically defensive from Mega Lopunny. Can 2 a KO a Shaman with Heat Wave, can 2 a KO Slowking, I knock out Fortress, I can potentially knock out the Mega Garchomp depending on its spread. I do massive damage to Stoutland. Ampharos can't really touch me back. I mean, it can potentially hit me hard with like a Specs Thunderbolt, but I do have switch-ins to that. I deal with the Wheezing, I can hit the Pyroar very hard, so this is a very nice mon for his team, and I didn't really need it defensive this week, as something like a Banded Stoutland 2 KOs me anyway, same with Mega Garchomp with Stone Edge, and I can take on the Shaman relatively well anyway, being able to resist its stab. So that is our Zapdos, nothing too crazy, relatively standard moveset. Again, Eevee spread just to outspeed a Jolly Mega Garchomp. So that is that. Not too much to go over there. Moving on, we now have our Ferrothorn, and we are a fully specially defensive Ferrothorn, meant to take on things like Sylveon, potentially a Slowking with Fire Blast, Shaman with HP Fire, can live any 2 hits from the Garchomp, can still take on the Stoutland relatively well. Even a Banded Superpower, I believe, does not knock me out, can take on the Ampharos relatively well. So that's why I'm specially defensive. We have a Gyro Ball and Power Whip as our offensive moves. Gyro Ball for things like the Sylveon, potentially a Sandrush Stoutland. Ball is just hitting most things on his team in general, and Power Whip mainly for things like the Slowking. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's only for the Slowking, as well as maybe a little bit for the Hippowdon. So those are our 2 offensive moves, and then we just have Stealth Rock and Spikes. Like I said, his only hazard removal is blocked 100% by my Jellicent, and it really cannot touch my Jellicent unless it has something like Toxic, like a Volt Switch is not going to be doing anything to it. So that is why I'm running dual hazards on this thing. I didn't really need any other moves, didn't care about knockoff, didn't care about anything else, so I can just run dual hazards. If I can get up 1, then great. If I can get up 2, then even better. This thing is just mainly there to set up hazards. His team's not super weak to him, but his whole team is grounded aside from Wheezing. So Spikes are going to be very nice, and Rocks, of course, are just nice to get chip damage off on things, and setting up hazards ensures a couple KOs with my Flareon, which I will get into in a little bit as well. Now, the next mon on my team is a very big win condition, a mon that a set that I've been looking to bring the entire season, but couldn't. However, I am fully justified in doing so against his team because he does not have a Dark type, and the Steel type that he has is complete setup fodder to this. And we have our Calm Mind Acid Armor Reuniclus running mixed defensive with a bold nature so that I can take on things like the Stoutland at +2, the Mega Garchomp at +2 defense. I beat a Calm Mind Slowking, I can set up on a mixed variant of Shaman, can set up all over the Hippowdon. I pretty much just set up all over his team, and there's not a ton he can do about it aside from potentially roar me out, or maybe be an SD Garchomp, or just be able to hit me hard with Stoutland or taunt me with Wheezing or something. So, huge threat to his team. Like I said, no Dark type. The Fortress can take Psyshocks relatively well, but again, it's just complete setup fodder. If he goes for, say, Stealth Rocks or he tries setting up hazards, I set up on him and then can potentially win the game right from there. Recover, of course, just to remain healthy. And I think I already went over the Eevee spread, but 128 defense with a bold nature just allows me to take on his physical threats, and 128 his special threats. And I can set up accordingly to what's in. Like if Shaman's in, I'm probably going to set up a Calm Mind because I'm not 2 KO'd by 2 Life Orb Seed Flares unless he gets a Spadef drop, of course. The ×2 Spadef drop, actually. So this is a huge threat to his team. Cannot be toxic. If he Whirlwinds me out with Hippowdon, then I have responses to that. Pretty much anything hits it hard, even the Flareon, which I'll go into a little bit. So yeah, that is our Reuniclus, and I'm looking forward to this thing putting in work. Now, after our Reuniclus, we have our Flareon, and yes, this week we are not bringing Mega Lopunny. First time all season, But when you look at his team, he just has a team full of checks. Sylveon, if it's physically defensive, can potentially take 2. Hippowdon switches into it relatively comfortably. Shaman can take a hit and hit me with an Air Slash or a Seed Flare. Slowking can take hits. Psyshock me. Fortress, I have to run Fire Punch for. Mega Garchomp, I would pretty much force to run Ice Punch for. If Stoutland is in the sand, it outspeeds me and kills me. Weezing can take 2 hits, and the only things that I can pretty much OHKO without worrying too much about it killing me is Pyroar, and even then it can be Scarfed and hit me with a lot of damage. So Mega Lopunny just doesn't have a great matchup this week. So that is why I'm leaving it on the bench. But this Flareon is a lot of fun. We are bringing a Choice-Banded Flareon with Flare Blitz, Superpower, Bite, and Will-O-Wisp. But the reason we are running Bite is because of his Slowking. 2 KOs any variant of Slowking, unless he is Colbur Berry, and even then, I pop the Colbur Berry. I can even take a hit from it if I wanted to. If a T-Waves me, it's just giving me Guts, which hits ridiculously hard with a Choice Band. Flare Blitz 2 KOs almost his entire team. It can it OHKOs an offensive Sylveon, easily 2 KOs a defensive one. Can 2 KO any Hippowdon that is not fully max invested in defense, and even then it's a 2 KO after Spike. OHKOs the Shaman, like I said, can 2 KO the Slowking, can potentially 2 KO the Slowking with Flare Blitz as well, if he's not running a lot of physical defense, so I expect him to for my Mega Lopunny again. OHKOs any version of Fortress. Even a Mega Garchomp is not going to appreciate a Flare Blitz. Before it Mega Evolves, it does 40 to 47%, and then after it Mega Evolves... Actually, no, after it Mega Evolves, it's taking 40 to 47%, assuming it's not entirely bulky, which is a ton of damage to get off on a Garchomp with a resisted hit. But Flareon just runs through his team in that aspect. It really wall breaks his team. It can knock out the Stoutland, it can potentially knock out Ampharos, it 2 KOs Weezing, and if he poisons me with Sludge Bomb, then that's great because I'm getting a Guts boost and can just knock out his entire team. And I do a ton of damage to Pyroar with Superpower. Well, I knock it out with Superpower and can almost knock it out with Flare Blitz, actually. Like, it's knocked out by Flare Blitz after Rocks easily. So this is a huge offensive threat to his team. What's really nice is it outspeeds a lot of his potential bulk, being Sylveon, Hippowdon, Slowking, Fortress, even potentially Weezing, and it just hits everything hard. This Mon does not have a switch in on his team, unless he's like a physically defensive Mega Garchomp, which would be kind of weird. Like, again, like I said, even a physically defensive Hippowdon does not appreciate taking this Flare Blitz, unless it's fully Fizz Def, and even then, like I said, 2 KO'd with Spikes up. So, that is the team. A little bit nervous going into this without Mega Lopunny, but I think the decision to not bring it is justified because everything on his team can be a check. So this is the team. Hope you guys look forward to the match that will be going up tomorrow. And check out Rhyquinn if you haven't already. He's a great guy, streams daily, just became a full-time streamer. So thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you in the match.